Hello and welcome to Today in Gaming. I'm Ty Matthews presenting you another Creation Kit tutorial. Today we're going to be talking about making a weapon for Skyrim. Now mind you, that isn't importing custom models. However, that will be coming further down the road after we get through all of this basic stuff. And that's something I can't wait for. So let's get into it. First thing you gotta do is go over to the Items tab in the Object window. Open that up. And after expanding that, go down way to the bottom of that tab and you'll find Weapon. Here are all of the weapons in Skyrim, including the ones that are enchanted or templates. And templates are weapons that are made to serve as bases for new weapons. But to start making your weapon, the easiest thing to do is just to find a weapon you want, right click it and click Edit. And you'll see all of the information on that weapon. Changing the ID will also change the form. So if I rename this Axe01 to Awesome Killing Blade 01, and click OK, it'll ask me this, and I would want to create a new form because if I click No, it's going to be a completely different blade than what the game has already referenced as Axe01, and that won't be good for our game, and you'll mess everything up. So you would want to click Create New Form. But I'm not going to go off with Axe01. Let's find the Iron Sword. All we're going to do today is just add an enchantment to an Iron Sword. So let's rename it. I'm going to make this an Iron Sword of Paralyzation. And I'm going to add the initials of my mod name at the very end so that it's easier to search for in the filter here on the object window. Name, I'll just name it something like Awesome Sword. Don't do this in your mod because that's just stupid. No one wants to find the sword and be like, wow, this modder has no creative bits to his brain. He couldn't even think of a name, he just said Awesome Sword. That's pretty lame. Anyway, enchanting, this is the enchantment you're going to get, and there are a lot available here. Because we're looking through the ones for the weapons, it'll only show the ones for the weapons. Here are a few of the ones I want. Ench Weapon Paralysis 04, 05, and 06, and obviously as those go up, they get stronger. So I'm just going to do something simple like 04. Enchantment, this is how much charge the item has. Typically, it's about 3,000, so I'm going to give it 2,500. Value, I'm going to give my weapon a value of 5. Because even though it's got a nice effect, it's somehow really worthless. This is something that you would not want to do in a real mod. I'm honestly just showing you an example here. Something that is this powerful, it wouldn't make sense for it to have such a low value. So give it a value about 500. Or 400 to 500 is where I usually go for something like this. Game data. Weight, obviously the weight in game. If you haven't played Skyrim, then while you're watching this, play it and then you'll know what weight is. If you don't know what weight is, something's wrong with you, because Skyrim's been out for over 5 years. So I'm going to set my weight to 13. Reach, for one-handed swords it's usually 1, and for two-handed weapons it's usually 1.3. Just note that for future reference. Speed, it's typically 1. I haven't really seen any time where it's faster. But if you were planning on making your character swing the sword or hammer or whatever faster, you can change that here. Just don't make it too unrealistically fast. I'm keeping that at 1. Damage, this is the base for damage. Obviously your skill, your perk trees change how much damage the weapon seems to do. I'm going to set this to 10. This is the base for our damage. Number of projectiles 1. It's really always going to be 1 here. especially for something like this. Even for bows, it says 1. Number of projectiles stands for how many projectiles are sent when you attack. It's honestly that easy. I assume this is really used in games like Fallout, and this was just inherited from the last CK, as Bethesda usually does. They just add more programming to each creation kit and use that for the next game. So for a bow, it fires 1 arrow. You're going to have 1. For a sword, if you want it to, I don't know, have the effect of 2 swords swinging, which makes no sense at all, and it would probably cause some issues. You can do more than 1, but I highly advise you not to. In fact, do not. That would be stupid. Keep it at 1. Base VATS to hit chance. This stands for what the chance is to hit the weapon while it's being held by another actor. Now, what weapon blocking and stuff is already set up in Skyrim, and you don't need this. I don't even think that's what it particularly means. I think this is also something that was inherited from a Fallout CK, and it's usually left at 0. I haven't seen it otherwise. Critical percentage multiplier. This stands for how much damage is multiplied when used with this weapon. If set to 0, then a critical hit cannot be landed using this weapon. Usually, this is only used for things like daggers. For instance, sneak attacks with this, it won't land a critical hit because it's set to 0. But a sneak attack with a Daedric dagger, that has 1, so it will land a critical hit. Easy to understand. And since this is a sword, we're going to leave it at 0, because we're going to stick to the laws found within the game. Stagger. How much your character or another character is going to stagger when hit with a blade. Critical damage. How much extra, basically, base damage is going to be added when a critical hit is landed. Now, mind you, the critical percent multiplier sort of changes what you do. You can still land a critical hit at times. But say for a dagger, if you're doing a sneak attack, mostly because this value is set to 1, you will likely land a critical hit, especially on a sneak attack. So if you were to land a critical hit with this sword, you would get this. These 2 boxes are used in Fallout games and are inherited from the earlier creation kits, just like things like base VATS to hit chance. So we won't be using these. Moving on, I believe this critical effect listing here is it's establishing something that would happen if you were to land a critical hit. And it also isn't typically used, so I'm going to leave that value at none. Really, in the game data, all you've got to worry about is this section here. And that also means we can just move on to the art and sound. And this is already set for us. And this is why we want to edit a currently existing weapon and then create a new form from it. So this is already all done for us. See, we have the mesh already set up. We don't have to worry about that and input the name and all of that. And we've got sounds. We have everything. Everything's already made for us. So we can just skip right on past that part as well. Rumble, this is for if you've got a 360 controller and you're editing that. Left motor strength is how much it'll rumble on the left side of the controller. Right motor strength is the same, just for the right, obviously. This is actually used in some weapons in Skyrim, I believe, that I've seen, but not often, so it really doesn't matter that much. But if you want to play around with that, I guess you can. It was typically used for Fallout games, obviously, since it says firing, so if you fire a gun, it'll rumble just a bit. And those are the 3 main tabs. Up here we have flags. Usually it's only clicked to be playable. If it is a bound weapon, it will look like this. Just the bound weapon box checked, and the can't drop button checked. Because if you were to drop a bound weapon, that means you could keep it, essentially. And the reason we don't click playable here is because really it is playable, but it's summoned into your hand already when you cast the spell. So you don't go into your inventory and equip a bound weapon. That doesn't make sense. It's something that's summoned, something that's conjured. Up here we have skill one-handed, yes. So if you use this weapon enough, it will level up your one-handed skill. It wouldn't make sense to use a sword a lot and then get your speech skill up. That doesn't really make sense. So keep that at one-handed if you got a sword. Unless it's a great sword, that would be two-handed. And equip type, you're going to have right hand. If you were to choose left hand, it would naturally equip in the left hand unless specified in game. And typically swords are set to the right hand. If you want a specific description, you can just type that in there. Keywords, vendor item weapon, that tells a service provider that if they sell weapons, they can buy this or they can sell it. Simple as that. Now, if a service provider like a blacksmith is going to sell something, that would have to be in their lists, and that's a different topic. So we'll get to that someday. Wet material iron, that tells the game that this blade is made of iron. You can craft it under iron in a forge. But that's also determined by if it can be forged, which is also another topic. And currently, we don't have settings for that because this is a new form. And we would have to make a whole recipe just for Iron Sword of Paralyzation TV. Web type sword. This tells the game that it is a one-handed sword. The weapon type for greatsword would be, you guessed it, greatsword. Scripting, if you've got a quest, some scripts might go in here if this weapon has something to do with the quests. Anyway, that's it for my sword, so I can click OK, create new form, and then that's made. Now, there's not a way of getting it in game, and to do that, I could just put it into the game by going into a cell and dragging it in. I'm going to try to cover this items tab pretty quickly in the next week or so. Since we've got a little bit of time left, we can go into armor and I can show you just what the differences are between making armor and making a weapon. Let's open the Armor Iron Banded Cuirass, edit, and this is the cuirass that we see in game, has banded iron armor. If you're making armor for an NPC, it's going to have to be set to default race for the race and just hit body. Down here you'll see sounds aren't set up for us in here. And you might be thinking, why must I go through and select the sounds for my armor? Well, good news, you don't, because this is already determined in the audio tab. So you don't have to worry about that. Armors like cuirasses don't have equip types. Armors like shields obviously do. You've got to click shield. This is also something I should mention to you. In the weapon editing, you'll see shield. It's just because it's part of this form list. And of course, you've got the base defense here, armor rating, weight, and what kind of armor it is. It'll show you, or that is, it'll tell you what kind of armor it is in the inventory in game. And it will respectively add skill to the light armor perk tree or the heavy armor perk tree. And that is how you make weapons or armor in the Skyrim Creation Kit. I hope you learned something today. Thank you for watching.